Ed Belfour and Ken Hitchcock are headed to the Dallas Stars Hall of Fame. We'll talk about the legacy that they left on Texas hockey and why the Stars Hall of Fame is so important. All of this coming up on today's episode of the Locked On Stars podcast.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, coming to you on this Wednesday, July 12th. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more and visit FanDuel.com today to get started. And whether this is your first time here or you are a recurring listener, thank you for stopping by and making Locked On Stars your first listen every single day. Be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube. Follow along on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. We are always free and available, no matter where or how you choose to listen. Thank you for tuning in and being an everydayer for throughout the offseason and in the regular season, which we're still a good ways away from, but still, always news breaking in the world of Dallas Stars hockey, it seems, as we have some new inductees for the Dallas Stars Hall of Fame. It was announced yesterday that the Stars Hall of Fame selection committee has chosen to induct former goaltender Ed Belfour and former bench boss of the Dallas Stars, Ken Hitchcock, into the Dallas Stars Hall of Fame. An incredible honor for both men who were key contributors to bringing Dallas a Stanley Cup in the year 1999. Ed Belfour in particular is considered, and rightfully so, one of, if not the greatest netminder in franchise history. 160 wins with the Dallas Stars, 95 losses, 44 ties, a .910 career save percentage in Dallas, and 219 goals against average. He helped lead the Dallas Stars to a Stanley Cup in 1999, going on an incredible run, taking down teams like the Oilers, the Blues, and the Colorado Avalanche, and, of course, the Buffalo Sabres in that final Stanley Cup round with some very impressive numbers, even by today's standards, and really even back in the 90s, back when I know, goaltending has come quite a long way, but this was an era where goaltending wasn't necessarily a given on every team. It feels like every team has some form of a number one goalie who puts up pretty solid production, but Ed Belfour was just on a completely other level back in the mid to late 90s for the Dallas Stars. Was really an incredible goalie for the majority of his career. But during that playoff run in 1999, a .930 save percentage, a 1.7 goals against average, and 3 shutouts recorded on that run to winning the Stanley Cup, the first in Dallas Stars franchise history. A run unlike anything that we've ever seen. And we've seen some really impressive runs. Anton Hudobin back in 2020, Ben Bishop back in 2019, even Jake Ottinger in that first round series against the Calgary Flames. But Ed Belfour did what those guys did to a greater extent and for longer. I guess Anton Hudobin did go pretty far into the Stanley Cup finals in 2020, but unfortunately he and the team were not able to capture the cup, whereas Belfour went that deep, put up those impressive numbers, and was a huge reason why the cup was hoisted in Dallas when it was all said and done, after defeating that scrappy Buffalo Sabres team. And it's an interesting time in the Stars organization and in Stars history, because we're starting to see some modern players break the records of legends. We saw Jason Robertson, be the first to surpass Mike Modano in his point record. We saw Miro Heiskanen surpass Sergei Zubov for the most points for a defenseman in a single season in Dallas Stars history. But it almost feels like what Ed Belfour did was untouchable. And it's not a slight to Jake Ottinger or really any goalie who has come since. Marty Turco, Ben Bishop, Anton Hudobin, and the goalies that are to come down the road, whoever those may be in net for the Dallas Stars. It's not a slight to their talent, their abilities, their skills, but Ed Belfour was just that special. And I know that he means so much to so many people in this community in Dallas, to so many people on his team. And of course, so many great players on that cup winning team. Darian Hatcher, the captain, Mike Modano, Sergei Zubov. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Of course, those are the big names, but I imagine many of them would tell you that they don't win that championship. They don't win that tournament run without the help of Ed Belfour in net. And it's interesting seeing these inductions into the Stars Hall of Fame, because these are players that, I barely caught the back end of their careers. A guy like Ed Belfour. I mean, I was 6 months old when the Stars won the Stanley Cup in 1999. So I wasn't necessarily conscious of what was going on when all of that went down, but you get to look back at the highlights, you get to look back at the numbers, and you just get to be in awe of what performance was put on. And I'm sure many of you listening or many of you watching on YouTube, but there were probably some of you who were alive, and maybe some of you got to watch that happen either in person. You got to attend playoff games, you got to attend Stanley Cup final games in Dallas, or you watched on TV, listened on the radio. And it's exciting to get to see the recognition that these players continue to get past the end of their careers. And I mean, Jake Ottinger, especially now, I feel like is kind of destined to be the next great Dallas Stars goalie. And we're hoping for some more longevity from him. Maybe we can see him play even longer than Ed Belfour. And maybe one day he'll get to a place where he surpasses Eddie's legacy. That is yet to be seen. And it's going to be a tall task, not just for Jake Ottinger, but for any goalie who comes after and who dares try to replicate what Ed Belfour did for the Dallas Stars since joining the team in the mid-90s. It was a run unlike anything we've really ever seen since. And I don't really know if we'll see anything like it anytime soon, but I'd like to see Jake Ottinger and others try. A huge congratulations to Ed Belfour on getting inducted into the Dallas Stars Hall of Fame alongside his coach, who helped win that Stanley Cup as well, and Ed Belfour and Ken Hitchcock, the only Dallas Stars head coach to win a Stanley Cup in franchise history. And we'll talk about Ken Hitchcock and his legacy in Dallas coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by our friends at Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make shorts that make you look good. It's as simple as that. They have their shorts designed in a stretch khaki form to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg to give you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dogs do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs have fixed the issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches, so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice any movement. And I have personally worn Bird Dogs countless times since receiving my pair. Anytime I go out, whether it's to a baseball game or some sort of physical activity, maybe a hike, maybe I'm going out to play some disc golf with some friends, Bird Dogs are the perfect shorts to accompany me on any adventure that I have. And I guarantee that they can do the exact same for you. If you want to get your own pair, go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and enter our promo code LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. Again, if you want to receive that Yeti-style tumbler with your order, just go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and use promo code LockedOnNHL. We guarantee you that once you put your Bird Dogs on, you won't want to take them off. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day, for continuing to make our podcast a part of your daily routine. A big shout out to all of our everydayers out there listening on your favorite podcasting platform of choice, watching on YouTube, discussing the newest inductees to the Dallas Stars Hall of Fame. Ed Belfour, the most iconic and most notable goalie in the franchise's history, up next to arguably the most iconic and noteworthy coach in Dallas Stars franchise history. Ken Hitchcock quite literally helped transform the image of hockey in Dallas. He helped shape the modern image of what hockey is here in Texas. Ever really since he joined the team back in the late 90s, he helped change the trajectory of the organization. 5 straight playoff appearances from 1997 to 2001, 2 Western Conference titles, 2 President's Trophies, and of course, 1 Stanley Cup championship in 1999. And even when things haven't necessarily been great after that win in 1999, the fan base hasn't wavered and they've remained passionate. And a huge part of that is what I was alluding to in the last segment of these fans that witnessed this cup win, because the Stars were able to get a win with the Stanley Cup in Dallas relatively quickly after the move from Minnesota. I mean, they moved here to Texas in 1993, and then 6 years later in 1999, they find themselves hoisting the Stanley Cup and being champions. And that's huge in terms of capturing the fan base's attention and keeping them locked in, keeping them engaged, and then encouraging them to continue to come back, to continue to buy tickets, to continue to buy merchandise and invest in this team. And Ken Hitchcock deserves a ton of credit for being a driving force for that, utilizing the talent that he had on the roster, including your Ed Belfours of the world, your Mike Madonnas, Darian Hatchers, Yuri Lettinen, Sergei Zubov. Just on and on and on. So many incredible players that he utilized their game and put them in positions to be successful. And even, obviously, even his tenure in Dallas did not necessarily end as I'm sure he wanted it to, or, really probably anyone wanted it to. I mean, this is a guy who's a respected coach among the fan base and just a respected coach across the board, as he, had a pretty long and successful NHL coaching career, including another pit stop in Dallas in the mid 2010s before eventually closing things out in Edmonton. But he is a huge reason why so many fans fell in love with the sport here in Texas and have continued to support this team since, not necessarily day one of the team's arrival, because he wasn't coaching the team in 1993, but he really helped pick up the pace and accelerate the stage of the franchise, helping them win a championship, and not just necessarily, a one and done championship, but making sure they remain competitive. They, of course, had an opportunity to win a second consecutive championship in the year 2000, of course, just falling just short in that final round in the Stanley Cup final. But winning the President's Trophy, consistently making the playoffs during that time frame of the late 90s and the early 2000s. I mean, that is massive for retention for the fan base. The passion around the team continues to drive the front office and the organization to want to be great, to want to go out and sign big free agent players, to draft incredible players, to build a strong organization, because that is the culture that has been cultivated here in Dallas. And a lot of that started when Ken Hitchcock took over and started to implement his system into the locker room, into the organization. And players want to stay in that culture. So many of the most notable Dallas Stars players are long tenured players, and those guys stay around for a while, and they plant their roots here, they build their legacies here, and then they pass on that legacy and that culture to the next generation. And we're watching that unfold right now. We're watching, guys like Joe Pavelski, even though he's not the longest tenured Dallas Star, he's been here long enough to intermingle with the veterans on the team, your Jamie Benns, your Tyler Seguins, and those guys are kind of taking that next step in their career of getting towards the back end of their career. And then we're starting to see Jason Robertson, Rope Hintz, Wyatt Johnston, Miro Heiskanen, Jake Ottinger step up into these leadership roles. And this is just a culture that has been cultivated and curated by Ken Hitchcock long-term in Dallas. And I think there would be some sort of following of hockey in Dallas. Let's say the Stars still had yet to win a Stanley Cup since their arrival in the city. I still think that there would be fans, there would be somewhat of a following, but if it wasn't for that championship, I don't know if it would be quite as huge as it is. Obviously, it's never going to be as big as a market as Toronto or Montreal or New York or Boston. And we all know that Dallas at the end of the day is a football city through and through. But I mean, this is a huge and passionate fan base that still has, reached some pretty high levels of success that even between 1999 and now, some other teams haven't even gotten close to sniffing the same level of success as the Dallas Stars. And Ken Hitchcock deserves a ton of credit, not just for what he did in helping the team hoist the Stanley Cup in 1999, but helping structure what would become one of the most consistent fan bases in the NHL, a fan base that has stuck through thick and thin, knowing that even when there's bad days and even when there's bad times, that means we are due for some good days and that they are not too far around the corner, because this organization has a healthy structure and a commitment to excellence that was started back when Ken Hitchcock took over. And, these fans have stuck around and they're helping usher in this new generation of fans, which is one of the most exciting aspects of being a member of this community and being a member of this fan base, is the cultivation of the old fans, or the veteran fans, if you will, helping bring in this next generation. And that's another reason why I think the Dallas Stars Hall of Fame is interesting, and why I think it's important for it to be acknowledged and for fans to be knowledgeable of it. And we'll discuss some of that coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right, just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend on betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. We're in the second half of the MLB season. The playoff races are starting to intensify, and there's never been a better time to go bet on FanDuel. It's an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get your payment instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of the MLB. Third and final segment of today's episode of Locked On Stars, continuing our discussion of the Dallas Stars Hall of Fame, as it's really only been around for about 2 years now, still a relatively new idea. We know that there's been some additions in last year. Bob Gainey and Darian Hatcher inducted into the Hall of Fame, and then also was brought to my attention in preparing for this episode that any player who has their number retired in the rafters of the American Airlines Center for the Dallas Stars has also been inducted into the Dallas Stars Hall of Fame. Madonna, Sergei Zubov, Yuri Lettinen, just to name a few. Those are the ones I can remember off the top of my head. Masterton, I know as well. Forgive me for not. Neil Broughton, I know that's another one, and I think I'm missing one or two other ones, so forgive me for not having that written down here off the top of my notes. But any player whose number is retired in the rafters of the AAC, also a member of the Dallas Stars Hall of Fame. Pretty incredible, and I think it's a unique way for the organization to recognize the legends of the game, knowing that the organization and the franchise is in a good place and trending upward at the current moment with the players that they have, and off of a run to the Western Conference Final, hoping to get back to there, and if not, even go a little bit farther next season and potentially win the whole thing, but also taking a minute to pay homage and recognize the past. And that's something that I think the NHL does pretty well for the most part around the league, especially the more historic franchises. I feel like there's always a high reverence and a high regard for the legendary players of the past. And I think it's great that Dallas is making an investment in order to promote that for their organization, for their franchise, because we know that there are the fans who were around back in the late 90s and the early 2000s to watch them go on these runs to the Stanley Cup to win it in 1999. But then there's people like myself who, again, were 6 months years older. There's probably people out there who weren't born when the Stars won the Stanley Cup. And these older fans, have it's great for them because they get to reminisce on these memories and they get to see these players that they've admired for their entire lives get recognized even more so for their accomplishments and their achievements. And then the younger fans like myself, or people who weren't around for the Stars Cup win in 99, get to get educated on the history of the organization and of the franchise and see how the organization has grown, see how the organization has moved on from legendary players in order to find new ones, and then move on from those players and find and cultivate and grow new ones. It's a never-ending cycle, and I think it's great that the Stars are taking time to recognize these coaches, these GMs, these executives, these players, and giving them the recognition that they so deserve. Many of them already in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Many of them have won countless massive awards in their career, Vezina trophies. They've been nominated for Hart trophies and, Norris trophies. They've won Stanley Cups. They've won President's trophies. But it's a nice nod from the organization that they played for specifically to get this recognition of, hey, you are one of the best players or one of the best executives, one of the best coaches to participate and be a part of this family. So if you're watching on YouTube, let me know in the comment section down below, were you alive and do you remember the Stars winning the Stanley Cup in 1999? What's your favorite memory with Ed Belfour or Ken Hitchcock? Plenty, I'm sure, to choose from. Again, we discussed Ed Belfour's numbers, out of this world performances, especially in that 1999 postseason. And Ken Hitchcock is the only coach in Dallas Stars history to win the Stanley Cup. So let me know in the comment section down below your favorite memory with those two men. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. A little bit of a quicker one today. And I appreciate you still tuning in and for making us your first listen of the day. Remember that we are finishing out this week at a full 5 episodes upload. But then starting on Monday, we will be moving to 3 uploads a week, likely Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just through the off season until training camp rolls around. And then we will be back at 5 uploads a week. But I hope you guys enjoy your day. Subscribe to the show on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you back here tomorrow.